ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. Now we have a critical infrastructure fireside chat on the cybersecurity framework for OT, ICS, and IoT environments. We have with us our speakers, Varun Srivastava, Cyber Threat Intelligence Leader of the Muhapadla Group in UAE. Well, Varun is a cybersecurity professional with 13 plus years of experience in this domain. He also serves on the advisory board of startups to contribute towards organic growth in their offerings covering blockchain technology and e-commerce. We also have with us Shahab Siddiqui, the global head of cybersecurity, Petrofac UAE. Shahab is a cybersecurity professional with more than a decade of experience working in various domains of information security, having expertise in cloud security, enterprise secure architecture, and information security risk. Well, over to Varun and Shahab for the fireside chat. Thank you so much for joining us, gentlemen.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for hosting us today.
Thank you, Bhavna. Thank you, Bhavna, for the introduction. Hi, Shahab. How are you doing today?
Doing good, Varun. How are you?
Very good, very good. Thank you. So, we are all, working in a different situation now, and the environment has completely changed. So all of us are in work from home situation. So how's it coming up for you?
Yeah, we are gradually resuming back to work, but yeah, still a huge percentage of our workforce is working from home, and
right.
It's all based on convenience. Who can come to office and the actual requirement of who is actually needed in the office. Yep.
Correct. So maybe we can start with a quick introduction, and then we can get on with the topic.
Yeah, definitely. I think Bhavna gave a pretty good introduction. So, yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So about basically my experience here. So, I've been working in this industry for about 13 years, as Bhavna said. So I've covered almost all aspects of cybersecurity. And, we are talking about here critical infrastructure, which happens to be in the center stage right now because of emerging trends, as well as new tactics and techniques which are being used by attackers to target the backbone of our critical infrastructure across the globe. And especially in UAE, as you're aware that we have such kind of setup that most of our backbone is relying on the critical infrastructure. So that's where I see that cybersecurity happens to be playing a very central role, especially in the boardroom meetings and CXO discussions and different forums that are coming through. So maybe we can start with just understanding from your perspective. How do you see challenges that are faced, especially in the critical infrastructure domain on a daily basis that you come across, and what kind of vulnerability management aspects do you have in place, and what all recommended practices do you suggest in that regard?
Yeah, thanks, Varun. So, Varun, as you said rightly, cybersecurity has become central in a lot of discussion, and rightly so, and especially in the current situation of pandemic, where people are, the perimeter itself has diluted, and people are working from home from their own devices. So it's in a new reality that we all are living, and cybersecurity plays a very important role. And especially if I can just take a few minutes before we get into vulnerability management. If you see today, IT and networking and basically the confidence around that which cybersecurity brings in has enabled today for many companies to actually survive this pandemic. If a similar pandemic had happened, say 15, 20 years back, I think it would have been a much different world compared to now, when we are actually many of us or most of us are able to carry on their day-to-day duties. I would not say normally, but at least efficiently, due to remote working, increased bandwidth and all that. And then of course there is a element of cybersecurity there, because that brings in confidence that even working from home or remotely, you can still work securely. So yeah, that is that. And coming to your question on vulnerability management, specifically in OT security, OT domain is a bit challenging. I would say if we compare it to IT security, we of course have to start with asset identification of the asset, basically asset management, which is true for both IT as well as OT security. We need to know what are the assets we are looking forward to protect. And in my experience, I have seen asset management is more challenging in OT environment than IT, because you have a lot of different system, and a lot of people, if you speak with them, you will realize that they don't have the list of full inventory, what version they are on, and it is pretty disparate system with a lot of different assets. So I think asset management is one area which you have to get right when you start on vulnerability management journey in OT environment. And then, of course, OT has its own challenge of you cannot do active scanning to discover the asset, right? So basically, you will have to take a mix of strategy, possibly doing passive scanning or passive monitoring, or method using passive method to get discover your asset, and then for some of the assets use active scanning. So you will have to use a hybrid strategy to detect asset. And then once you have detected asset, I think it is very important to classify this asset into, I mean, you can follow your own method of classifying. What I have seen works well for OT is if you classify it into something of a major accidental hazard. So you classify it as a MAH, saying, okay, these are the assets which, if compromised, could lead to major accidents. Then second could be loss of essential services, if you classify certain asset in that bucket. And the third could be rest of the asset. I think that would give you a very clear picture of what you need to address first, and what you can address later. And even while mitigating, you will be more aware of what could go wrong. If something goes wrong, what impact it could have, it could happen. So, of course, you also have to subscribe to, I mean, feeds to get vulnerability data itself. Vendor also provides it specifically for their own technology, their own asset. And then there are other forums like which keeps on. I mean, there are so many forums that you can subscribe to. So I think the source of vulnerability data is again an important aspect that you have to address. And then definitely you need to, the major challenge is basically to even get a downtime in some cases to actually patch the system. So if you cannot patch something, maybe due to non-availability of downtime, or because it's a legacy system and you don't have a patch available, but there is a vulnerability that exists, then you have to think of other strategies, possibly some anomaly detection tool, maybe application whitelisting. Those are the things that you can look forward to. So yeah, I think in a nutshell, those are the key challenges and some key pointers on building your strategy on vulnerability management. So Varun, what are your thoughts on this area? What are the do you resonate to the challenges that I have experienced, or what is your experience?
Thanks, Shahab. So I think that was pretty insightful, especially on the challenges that we face in the industry on OT cybersecurity, and vulnerability management happens to be a central part of that particular strategy. So one of the key challenges that I face and I've seen also in industry is that obviously getting the vulnerability patched in the right place and at the right time is very important, but more importantly we have to be engaging with the stakeholders to get the vulnerability patched in time. So what happens there is we need certain downtimes on the system sometimes, or there might be some operational challenges that are faced by teams who are trying to patch the system. So that's where we see that a lot of high and critical vulnerabilities, when they're reported, they happen to take more than, let's say, 15 or 30 days at a stretch to get remediated. Yeah. That becomes like a huge gap wherein we see that cyber attackers try to scan the systems and they find that this gap is coming through, and that's where they feel that this is the right time to strike. So that's where their strategy of getting inside the infrastructure becomes more prominent here. So I think that is one of the major challenges that I've seen happening across the vulnerability management domain. covering other aspects that you have said about visibility. Yes, asset visibility is one of the more important factor here. But again, from my experience, I think getting stakeholders to do remediation is a very challenging aspects that I've seen in my experience.
Definitely. Very good point, Varun, there. So a very related area that if we can discuss upon is incident management, specifically in the context of OT cybersecurity. What are the challenges you see there, or what do you suggest? How do we define a incident management strategy in OT?
Okay. From the incident management point of view, as we understand, OT systems happen to be, let's say, backbone of whatever we see in actual life. So what we see that is, for example, if a OT system goes down for, let's say, even a few seconds or few minutes, that becomes a huge issue in a real life scenario. For example, grid network goes down, then it actually impacts your electrical systems. For example, water supply goes down, that completely paralyzes the water supply system. So getting this availability scenario in place is one of the major important factor that everyone needs to address while looking into the cybersecurity. So from incident management point of view, I see that as you're aware, the convergence of IT with the OT security is becoming more and more prominent. Earlier OT used to work in silos, and there used to be some kind of obscurity which used to protect the environment. But now we have our HMIs which are actually manned over a PC terminal, for example, and that PC terminal happens to be based on a legacy OS or based on some kind of legacy applications that are running there. That is definitely is like a Achilles heel, which we can see that could lead to a major disaster in the scenario. So from incident management point of view, I see that the workflow of, let's say, first of all, identifying, as you said, about assets is one of the major important factor that should be looked into. So for that purpose, we need to have like a central management database or, central repository, which should be accessible to all the realized stakeholders. Starting with that, then this asset management database, for example, bringing visibility now, has to be integrated with your incident management, let's say solution set or, or workflow that you have built in your environment. So when, for example, incident responder is trying to, let's say, raise a ticket for that particular asset, he has to be able to correlate that incident in the asset management database through this workflow. Once that is solved, then the third part is now centralizing the complete view of what is happening in the OT environment vis-a-vis what is happening in the connected IT environment setup. So for that purpose, a lot of organizations now, as you're aware, are relying on SIM capabilities to view the complete posture of cybersecurity across OT and IT in one single pane. So that brings a kind of first of all comfort as well as flexibility for incident responder to do triage, and then maybe also raise, let's say, hunt scenarios for threatened team to start reviewing that. For example, if there is a retrospective attack that has been happening since long time, what has been the cause of that, where it originated, and do the RCA for that. And finally, for incident management perspective, getting our teams to respond in time, plus getting the stakeholders to work on those remediations is again an important factor that we should look into. So for example, the cycle for a P1 incident may be, let's say, 2 or 3 hours. That means that it should be resolved within a 2 or 3 hours scenario. It should raise from incident management perspective, and the stakeholders should immediately address those gaps with the recommendations of your incident management team. So I think that is a workflow that I see is something which is central to incident management strategy in this environment.
Right. Especially a very important point, like making sure you liaise with a different stakeholder. And I think in OT cyber incident management, communication with various stakeholders is key.
Absolutely.
Because unlike IT incident where you will have a lot of SMEs available for a Windows system, or
Correct.
or on a firewall you will have people. So the time to respond is very fast in IT, and you have experts available, right? And in OT, I think the challenge is if you overreact also, like in IT, for example, you can say, okay, let's contain this, or let's reboot this machine, or let's take this machine out of the network. In OT, you cannot even overreact. So
Correct.
there is a fine balance that you have to achieve between overreacting and underreacting. And I think that is where it's very important to have a close connect and communication plan ready with the system engineers who are the expertise of those system, and have a tabletop with them. Okay, if something happens, what is it that we will do for which system? So I think that is very key, because I mean the challenges are very different. Even like if you have to do some forensic, or even if you have to look into some logs, in OT it becomes a challenge, because not all of these systems were developed keeping cybersecurity or security monitoring in mind. So
Correct. Correct.
even logging somewhere in many cases is very limited, and I think that is one key challenge which you should resolve if you see any incident management plan. I think this goes into the prepare phase of that, where you have the communication plan ready, you have the response plan ready, kind of for each area, what you can or what you cannot do.
Correct. Correct.
So yeah, I think
Absolutely.
also I feel you brought up one point of convergence, especially of SOC, of OT and IT. I think that is, of course, happening in most of the areas. And with OT, you have a unique advantage, because in OT, you can still baseline the network or that setup, because there is not many changes happening. So
Correct.
if you take any anomaly detection technology in IT, it's very noisy, because a lot of genuine new activities performed by human is happening on a day-to-day or hour-to-hour basis, which makes it very challenging to baseline your network. But in IT, I feel these anomalies or deviation are much lesser, and in OT, and it should be investigated more rigorously, because in IT you may ignore some of the deviation because it might be false positive. But in I think OT, these deviation and that and lot of anomaly detection technology that are today available, I think that gives a good tool for a incident responder or a analyst to monitor or detect a incident happening. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you touched the point on basically checking it carefully before we have things, remediated inside OT environment. So for that part, I'll just quickly touch upon recent incident that happened with it's a public news. So it's basically it happened with Honda recently. So what happened there was the Honda is they had a updater called update.exe that came in their environment, and people didn't check it properly, so they used that to update a particular system, and that led to a complete paralysis of their two branches. But the target of that update.exe was actually their SCADA systems, which fortunately didn't actually get affected by that. So if in case somebody would have checked it twice or thrice and saw the signature of that file, they would have avoided this particular disaster. So pretty much to the point that we have to be very careful while we are doing incident management, especially for the OT environment.
Yeah. So, Varun, moving on, if what do you think about digitalization, especially in COVID situation today, and how does it impact OT specifically? Because in OT, we have always seeked some comfort in air gap systems. That okay, these systems are air gapped, and that is why we have taken some comfort there. But today everyone knows that I mean a lot of systems that we assume to be air gap may not be air gap in the first place. And also there are valid business use cases which bring gives tremendous advantage to the business in this convergence or providing a connectivity to these some of these air gap systems. So how do you see digitalization especially today in COVID situation where people are working from home? How does it impact OT cybersecurity?
Thanks, Shahab. I think that's a very important topic that requires some kind of brainstorming here. So, from digitalization point of view, and especially in this current environment of remote working, I think air gap system and working in silos and working, let's say in a separate environment completely, which is not connected to internet, is not existing, I think, in any environment around us. So we are in the state of the world where we have variants of Stuxnet and black energy malwares that are coming out on a daily basis. So you know what happened with them? They paralyzed the entire country in certain scenarios. I think Ukraine, Estonia. We have a lot of examples that are coming through. So digitalization is definitely required and it's unavoidable. But again, maintaining cybersecurity in this environment is of topmost requirement, especially organizations now are seeing. I was reading a very important, very pertinent statistics here. So I think 9 out of 10 organizations with OT environment have been intruded in the past 1 year from 2019 till 2020. So almost we see a 90% conversion of attackers trying to reach out to OT environment. And how they do it? They do it through your digitization network from your IT to your OT interface. That is the bane of how they try to reach out to OT systems. So in this pandemic scenario, I think organizations need to put focus on basically what all aspects they should cover from securing this environment, and then ensuring that they have the teams on standby as well as remote to take care of the situation.
I think you rightly mentioned, Varun, that cybersecurity is a very important element of digitization. And I believe cybersecurity should be involved from the ideation phase itself of any digital initiative. So this is what we have done here as well. So any digital initiative from the beginning itself, you have cybersecurity team involved into that, because the cost of building cybersecurity later in the digitization project is not an efficient way of doing it. And in some cases, you may not even be able to do if you spend money, because if you have not considered cybersecurity. So I think that aspect is very important. You bring in cybersecurity team, or you have cybersecurity team members in the digital committee, so that you can bring that element in the beginning phase itself of any digitization project. So yeah, definitely. So
Thanks, Shab. So I think Bhavna is here and we are in the close of our time.
okay.
Thank you so much, Shahab and Varun,
Do you
for
want to make
joining
some?
us.
Can we make some closing
Closing. Yes,
statement?
please. Yes, we're a little short of time, but
Yeah, I
yes,
understand.
Shahab, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think one thing what Varun was also mentioning is a lot of cybersecurity incident today are in some way or other result of digitalization. And if you see in cybersecurity community, there is a lot of focus on industrial malware. However, of course, that is one aspect of it. However, if you see majority of the attacks that happen today, they somewhere originate into the IT or enterprise network first, and the dwell time there is significant before the intruder or attacker uh, intrude into the OT system. And also when they intrude into OT system, a lot of systems, usually in most cases that are compromised, are Windows system or Linux system. So I feel it is very important to detect these attacks early when they are in your IT network, and also to ensure your IT assets are well protected, because they are a attack vector for any attacks that are happening in majority of the cases. So yeah, that will be my final comment. Varun, if you can make some final closing comment.
Thanks, Shab. So I think pretty much that sums up, how the security for OT system should be in place, we have to ensure that it is brought in right from the beginning of detection and ensure that the life cycle of this detection leads to remediation in the given timeline. If it exceeds the timeline, then you lead to a scenario where it just spreads like wildfire. It might capture other aspects of your organizations, and in certain cases, we have seen even your suppliers get infected by the entire malware scenario. So pretty much that's the thing we should look into. Thank you.
Awesome, Bhavna. Thanks for hosting us today. It was a pleasure.
Thanks,
Thank
Bhavna.
Thank you so much, Shahab and Varun, for joining us.